My Marxist friends consider me an anarchist because I reject the state and the self-designated vanguard parties that aim to conquer it. On the other hand, sectarian anarchists throw up their hands whenever I quote Karl Marx, forgetting that anarchism has no political economy of its own, and that Bakunin himself translated Das Kapital into Russian and wrote to Marx, "I am your disciple and proud to be one." Victor Serge appeals to me because he was an internationalist with roots in both anarchism and Marxism, was critical of them both, and rejected sectarians who claimed to hold the monopoly of the truth, and who therefore felt free to manipulate, raid, and split activist groups, to expel dissenters, and shoot them when they had power. In any case, pluralistic and essentially nonviolent mass movements represent the only way for the party of humanity to emerge victorious in the coming planetary social struggles. Now, what I'd like to do next is describe the 7 parts of this book, which is a fairly hefty book. It's 351 pages. Because they are connected. There is an argument. And what I'd like you in the audience to do is to pick the part that interests you the most and ask me to end this by doing a little reading or talking a little bit about the aspect of my argument that most engages you. The radical rants and internationalist essays in this collection have been selected and organized to present a coherent argument about capitalism's apparent collapse and the possibility of a more egalitarian and ecological future. Our discussion begins in the present with the crash of 2008 and asks the question, is there life after capitalism? I propose my alternative in part 1. Is another world really possible? And I let my imagination take power by proposing a realistic scenario for a successful mutiny on spaceship Earth, and by demonstrating scientifically and humoristically that my plan might actually work. My modern Archimedes hypothesis, illustrated here in this diagram, is based on historical experience and contemporary theories of cybernetics, chaos, emergence, dialectics, quantum mechanics, and Castoriadis's content of socialism. It connects an historically proven lever of workers' solidarity, illustrated here, with a 21st century philosophical fulcrum, planetary consciousness, illustrated there, and a global electronic place to stand, the Internet. A place where billions can unite in solidarity in order to lift the Earth before it succumbs to capitalist ecocide. So I'm taking up again the challenge of Archimedes, the 200 BC philosopher and engineer, who said, "Give me a lever long enough, a place to stand, and a fulcrum, and I will lift the world." The challenge to our age is this. Can we realistically imagine, without divine intervention or extraterrestrials, a technically feasible, ecologically sustainable post-capitalist future? And can we visualize historically roads, possible roads, leading to it? For if we can even imagine the sleeping powers of humanity awakening, if we can visualize billions of people throwing off the fetters of the profit system and establishing a planet-wide cooperative commonwealth, then we have already awakened these powers. So watch out for idea viruses. This book may be catching. And the place to catch it online, by the way, is at my website, invisible-international.org. Right, well, see, I live in France, and I originally wrote most of this in French. And of course, the adjective comes after the noun, l'international invisible It sounds even more scary idea, virus. Wait till you really start thinking about how we can transform the world, how we can unite. My search for a way out of today's crisis next turns backward into the history of the successes and failures of past social movements. In part 2, Dissecting Our Decadent Decade, I analyze capitalism's economic and ecological crisis, trace its origins, and warn of dangerous shortcuts that promise to shorten it, but won't. In part 3, Where Are the Riots of Yesteryear?, I look back at my experiences in the turbulent 60s, when many in my generation thought another world was possible, and try to draw some lessons. In part 4, Back in the USSR, I return even further back in history to the birth of the world's first Republic of Workers and Peasants Councils in Russia in 1917. If Russia proved that other worlds are possible, it also showed that they can turn into nightmares. By returning to the revolution's origins, I attempt to lay rest the ghost of the Soviet tragedy, which continues to haunt today's movement for another world. In part 5, Killing the Jews, I deal with another 20th century tragedy, the World War II United Nations casual abandonment of European Jewry. Along with the casual destruction of Dresden, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, the denial of the Holocaust, when it was happening, signaled the degeneration of capitalist democracy into a new global barbarism. I then take a break for a few laughs in part 6, Killing Sacred Cows, because comedy must follow tragedy. Finally, somewhat between comedy and tragedy, I present the story of my own political itinerary, as well as the story of the social movements and revolutionary organizations in which I have been active for 50 years, in the hope of passing on to today's activists something of what I learned in those universities. And just for those of you who were shocked by my chapter heading, Killing the Jews, I have to explain that my wonderful mother-in-law was a performer on the Borscht circuit, and that among Jewish performers who went up to perform for Jewish audiences, when she came home, we'd always ask her, "Mom, did you kill the Jews?" Which meant, of course, did the audience applaud. And I talk about Yiddishkeit and my own relationship to Jewishness, and also my own 20-year career rousing rabble here in Middletown and up in Hartford and around the state.
One of the people he talks about in his book is Robert Williams, who wrote a book called Negroes with Guns back in the early 60s. And I asked him about that in the question period.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right. You're talking about one of my finest hours. All right. I was a student at Yale College in 1960 when I read in the paper of a man named Robert Williams, a black man, someplace in rural Pennsylvania, which is, never mind, Dixie, even if it's above the Mason-Dixon line. And he and his buddies, all Korean War vets, had organized a NRA rifle club. Well, I was also a member of the NRA because I like to plink with 22s at targets, and I'm a fairly good marksman, suitable for winning bunnies for pretty girls at fairs and the like. So when the Ku Klux Klan came around, and of course they were terrorizing blacks there. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to say that this NRA club happened to coincide with the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which was the black freedom organization of the time. So there was an incident in which the Ku Klux came in to shoot up the black section of town,